welcome back to the final session before lunch. We'll switch gears now and actually switch languages. So the next session will be in English, and I'm very happy to actually also switch countries, if you will. Well, we'll have Germany. We'll keep an eye on Germany, but we'll also look at other countries in Europe and abroad, perhaps. We'll see. And Jessica Ortner is going to take us on this journey. And I actually took my little notes here because her title is something you might get confused with. That's why I really wanted to spell it out. Jessica Ortner is the contracting director for Central and Eastern Europe and the Middle East and Africa at Hays, a global recruitment and workforce solutions company. So she's someone who definitely knows where the workforce is moving, how people are working in different countries, especially when you're a freelancer. And if you have perhaps thought of working somewhere else as a freelancer in Europe, and you are wondering whether your skill set is worth it or you're prepared for moving, she might be the right person. I'm sure she's the right person to talk us through this. So please join me in welcoming Jessica Ortner.
Hi. Oh, wow. It looks pretty impressive from down here, I can tell you, and it's very bright, so you can definitely see me. I can't see you, but that's maybe good for my nervousness. Let's see. Thanks for having me today, and I hope that you already had a good morning. Thanks for taking the time today to join me in, let's say, half-hour session of Freelancing Without Borders, where freelancers thrive across Europe. And unfortunately, I have to start a little bit with a disclaimer up front. So why with a disclaimer? Because maybe you came here and you have already opened up your Booking.com app or your Expedia app, and the way you move out that door, you have the expectation that you book your plane ticket or your next hotel spot, because you'll definitely know where you will go and freelance, so in which European countries it's going to be the best place to be. Unfortunately, I can't provide that to you. Why is that? Because from my point of view, freelancing across Europe is very different. And it's not only different because of the countries, it's different because of your professions, it's different because of what you want, what you're looking for, what is important for you. So the answer to that question, what is maybe the best country for a freelancer to work in Europe, it's going to be very different for each single one of you. So the only thing that I can do today, unfortunately, is give you a framework. And with the framework, you can, so to say, do your homework by yourself, and then you can book your flight tickets with Expedia or with Booking.com or whatever platform you like to use. So you'll definitely go home with a little bit of homework. And the second disclaimer, or something I wanted to, a caveat I maybe wanted to tell you before we go into the context, is when I came here, I thought, is that actually a topic that interests you? Because I can tell you it's always that kind of a very good headline. Everyone wants to work cross borders. It always looks or sounds nice to work from a sunny beach in Spain or from a nice cafe in Paris. But when you look at research, it's still a little bit of a myth. So digital nomads don't make the majority of freelancers nowadays. It's still a minority. So actually, I wanted to do a little bit of a test and also engage you, because I know that this is the session before the lunch break, so bear with me. But by a show of hands, who of you gets their revenue from a cross-border environment? So before you raise your hand, what I mean with that, it doesn't mean that you are maybe a foreigner and you just came here for that conference, which is absolutely perfect, and Berlin is a nice city, but you maybe still work in your country. What I mean is you work in one country, you live in another, and hopefully you pay taxes in a third one. So you have that cross-border thing. So can you give me a show of hands? How many of you have that and it comes from more than 20% of their revenue? Okay, you represent the average because it's a minority. So not many of you currently have that environment. Interestingly, I think the reason that you still sit here, although that's maybe not a topic for you, means that there is going to be room for that topic in the future. And that's what I truly believe, and that's why I'm also passionate about and why I stand here. But to bring us all on the same page, I had to think of one typical freelancer, or I wanted to come up with an example, let's say, of one typical freelancer that we can all relate to, because I had the feeling that maybe otherwise you don't really can resonate with what I'm talking about. So the person I came up with, and we all know him, and sorry, I know it's in the middle of the summer and I already make you think of Christmas, but Santa Claus for me is the absolute typical cross-border freelancer. One day a year, he travels around the globe, delivers his services to different clients with totally different expectations. They even name him different. And then the other 364 days of the year, he might probably end up with having to do his paperwork because of that mess he created. So that brings me to the point. Freelancing in Europe, your profession might be the same, but you will experience completely different realities the moment you really experience that cross-border thing. But who am I to tell you something about cross-border stuff and staffing? My name is Jessica Ortner. I work for the staffing industry for more than 20 years now, predominantly for Hays, which is a staffing company. I started for them in Germany, and 5 years ago I moved to their CEMEA department. So that's when I experienced that freelancing across Europe is different than in Germany. And that also brought me to the point that I would like to use that community also to make it easier for all of us. Not only from a staffing perspective, because I don't represent a staffing industry here, but at the same time I also represent a community of freelancers, which I lead from my former university, which is the WHU. WHU is a university very well known for its entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial spirit. They have a lot of freelancers, they are pretty international, and when I talk to my colleagues on a day-to-day basis or to my former study colleagues, they experience that problem on a day-to-day basis. So actually those two things made me come here today. And then I thought, okay, when I can't give you like a direct answer, what is the best country in Europe to work, I need to give you a framework. So what does a framework actually look like? From my point of view, it's an equation. It's an equation between the opportunity, the legitimacy, and the ease, whatever ease means. We'll get to that in a second. You need to make that equation or that calculation for yourself, and you even need to weight the different components differently. But I can tell you that when you do that, you will know where your freelance potential unlocks throughout Europe or even throughout the globe. So if I would tell my younger self, maybe because I'm now 20 years working in a corporate environment, I doubt that I might change sides. Maybe, let's see, but I doubt it. But what would I tell my younger self? I would tell my younger self to use that methodology to come to an informed decision rather than just going where I currently maybe have a feeling that this is the right place. So what do I mean with that? Let's start with the opportunity. Opportunity, a little bit of math that we need to do. So the opportunity for me is actually, again, three components. It's the size of the cake, it's the sort of the cake, and it's the price of the cake. So every one of you will answer that question differently. That is a typical view, I would say, now from a staffing industry or from a staffing company, because I look at the market from a different point than you do. I look at the market from what are the professions that are in that market, how big is the size of the cake, and what can the freelancers earn, because what can the freelancers earn also determines a little bit my turnover and my margin and my profit at the same time. So it's a little bit kind of an equation that also from a staffing perspective work, but from my point of view, you need to do the same thing from a freelance perspective as well. So what does industry mean? And again, these are the four biggest professions that you see across Europe, across the globe. That's common sense. You can all Google that. That's definitely not surprising. But tech, engineering, professional services, and life science, maybe you have a think of what tech and how big tech is in Germany, which can be totally different in the Czech Republic. Or you have a view how big your life science business is when you work in that area currently where you do or where you have your experience from. But the moment I would say you want to move to another country, you need to do your math and you need to do your research, how big that life science industry, for example, is in a different environment. Because it is definitely going to influence, from my point of view, your demand. It's going to influence also maybe your career in a sense, because the growth rates, I can tell you, in each of that different thought of the cakes, so to say, are totally different from country to country. And you can all, to be honest, Google that, ChatGPT that, Claude that. From my point of view, there's so much research out there, but do it. Do it for your profession, and even do it for within your profession, really your job code, your role that you currently work in. So I can unfortunately only give you a plain cake or give you a flavor of what the plain cake looks like, because otherwise I would definitely need way longer than 30 minutes to go into that details. But what you see on screen now is just the size of the cake, so to say, in Europe. So when you look at the data and that's from staffing industry analysts, how big the cake in Europe is from a staffing industry perspective, so the staffing industry itself. And again, a little bit of a caveat, you need to be a little bit careful with this data, because even counting freelancers from a research perspective is very, very, very complicated. So that's just rough numbers that you get a flavor of how big, so to say, the staffing market is in each single country. And what you can see here straight away, and that's maybe something for some of you that's common sense, for others that's maybe a surprise, but the size of the cake, so to say, in the staffing market, and I think that's important for you, for the non-perm people that you are, and for your profession, isn't always correlated with the GDP of a country, for sure. So the Netherlands is a good example of that. The Netherlands, by nature, have a very flexible workforce environment. So their staffing market is way bigger, so to say, in relation to, for example, the staffing market it would be in Germany. And why do I start with that, which might be common sense? But that, of course, influences how the environment sees you as freelancers, how clients, what the perception of the clients is about you as freelancers, but also how the politics, so to say, supports you or regulates you in a sense. And that is, from my point of view, very interesting, and also something where we as a community can influence that, because from my point of view, that needs to be influenced. It is very different around Europe how mature the countries are in their usage of non-perm skills, of freelancers, and you can definitely see that in all the numbers. And from my point of view, that needs to change, and it needs to be easier in the future. So after you have the size of the cake, it's about the price of the cake. Of course, you want to earn something. And again, I just brought you a little bit of an example, because what I would like to do is just give you some knowledge nuggets where you can find research, so to say. And what you see on screen now is just an example from Hays. That's the Global Tech Talent Explorer that Hays recently launched. It's a tool that you can access for free, where you can scroll down in the tech profession, which role you are in. You can compare countries with each other based on what their average or even the ranges of daily rates in contracting are, or when you're looking for permanent position, what the ranges in the permanent positions are. And you can also see, and that's what I think is very interesting, is also the impact of AI, for example, on that roles. So sorry, when I prepared that presentation, I saw that I accidentally, I think the role that I've chosen was AI engineer, which totally makes sense when you want to show the impact of AI through a role of an AI engineer. So the ones who are who are really into the details, they will spot that straight away. That maybe doesn't make sense, but you can also have a look at other roles as well. What I'm just trying to say is, from my point of view, it's not only your current demand, it's also your future demand. So maybe for some of you, your profession and what you do is set in stone already, but maybe for others it's not yet, or you want to change it. So if you want to change it, then of course change it to something that exists in 15 years from now on as well, or is even growing. Okay, so after you've done your math and you have found your perfect opportunity, The market is big enough. You can earn enough. You have to do a little bit of research on legitimacy. What is legitimacy? Everyone, when he or she maybe thinks of legitimacy, the legal stuff always comes into your mind, and that should, because it's the legal stuff. So it's the contract that you might have with your clients, it's the contracts that you have with maybe your agency, which determine at the end what the jurisdiction is that you will be held liable. What do I mean with hold liable? When you finish your service, there might be still obligations that you have to fulfill. And these obligations are then, when you work in a foreign country, of course not always on German law. They are on the country-specific law. And although you might think, yeah, that's quite the same, I don't care about that, I can tell you it's really important when you work, for example, in engineering or in life science, to have an eye on that, what the jurisdiction is that your service at the end will be, or in which jurisdiction you will be held liable for the service that you provide. At the same time, the legal angle is the one hand, and the tax angle is the other hand. So the tax angle is everything that has to do with taxes that you pay for yourself, income taxes, but of course also VATs, all the things that can influence how you are able to deduct your payments to the tax authorities. So the key takeaway for me is the moment you think of legitimacy is you have to really look at both angles. And country by country, the power of those two different also authorities, so the tax authorities versus the legal authorities, is completely different, for example, in the UK than it is in Germany. And you will feel that the moment you interact with them, because, for example, in the UK, your status is very heavily regulated by the tax authorities and by stuff like IR35. You might have heard about that when you've worked in the UK, which is in Germany the absolutely fabulous word of Scheinselbstständigkeit or something like that, which will determine your status in a sense, or which might not determine your status, let's say. So what do you need to think of? And that's why I asked at the beginning the question. So cross-border working doesn't mean I'm born in Germany and then I moved to Poland and now I'm doing freelancing in Poland. Yeah, okay, fine, do that, absolutely, but that's not cross-border, because then you live in Poland, you pay your taxes in Poland, and all of that is your jurisdiction normally is in Poland. But cross-border means it's actually when those four things, when you get to different answers, and you need to think of all those four things, unfortunately, because all of them can count looking at, or depending on from which angle you look at. So the first thing is, where do I physically work? That's the easiest one. I can look around, where do I physically work? And I need to determine where do I physically work for a period of time. So also switching locations. I'm not talking about a workation for a week. I may be talking about a longer period of time. The second thing is where my client is located, and where my client is located, not so much about the branch, maybe about the headquarter, because what I'm trying to detect here is the contract that I sign, which legal jurisdiction does it have? That's the important question that I try to answer here. The third thing is you might have a GmbH, or you might have any kind of a company that is now registered somewhere else. So you might work in Spain, but your company is registered in Germany. What implications does that have all of a sudden? And last but not least, nowadays also very interesting, where does the money flow? So we have a lot of payment providers out there, which is great, don't get me wrong. We definitely need flexibility here and an easier way to make cross-border payments, also in terms of currencies. But that maybe changes the money flow. So currently, all of a sudden, your money goes via a third party country, which can have implications. You just need to have clarity. So all of that things is, unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all answer, but the moment you get the baseline right, from my point of view, and you can answer that questions for yourself and even for your client, it will help you, from my point of view, to control the compliance, to control the mess that you might otherwise create. So I was talking about a little bit of an example, and I just mentioned UK, for example. So UK and Belgium, if you just would compare those two countries, when you go to the UK, you can't go to the UK without knowing what IR35 is, or you've never heard about IR35. That's a rule that determines your tax status. The moment you go to Belgium, no one knows what IR35 is. They don't even care. It's a totally different legislation. I just mentioned Germany. Germany, Scheinselbstständigkeit, you need to know what that is. You need to know how I can overcome that, what I need to do, how I can protect myself from a freelance perspective. In the Netherlands, you will be called a ZZP contractor. Sorry for if there's any Dutch-speaking people in the audience. I'm definitely not the right person to pronounce that word. But that's a status where actually even where by law, so to say, it's defined if you're a freelancer or not. So you answer a different set of questions. They're even published by the government, so to say. So your status is pretty clear by somehow guidelines, while we all know that in Germany it's a little bit blurry. So what I would like to give you is just some practical takeaways, because as I said, you need to do, unfortunately, your homework by yourself. So understand your jurisdiction footprint. So if those three things don't align, assume complexity. And those two things are where I physically work, where's my client, and where's my business registered. The second thing is don't optimize only for flexibility, optimize for compliance. From my point of view, the more flexible your setup is, the more structured your compliance needs to be, because definitely risk travels with you, and you maybe underestimate that. Choose the right engagement models, so not just the project. Sometimes giving away a couple of margin percentages might bring you safe nights. Of course, I have to say that from a staffing perspective, but that's maybe sometimes true. And I'm not saying that this Hayes is the only provider. There are much more on the market, but a direct contract can sometimes maybe be something that you don't want to deal with. Maybe you want to have an intermediate. Maybe you want to have an employer of record, agency of record. These are the things that you might look for in terms of the engagement model. You want to build your own advisory system. So what do I mean with advisory ecosystem? Tax advisor, or at least knowledge around that. You need to familiarize yourself with legal basics. And I think totally underestimated is, from my point of view, you need to be transparent with your clients. Because your clients, I can tell you for sure, have the same problem. So clients that maybe work with cross-border freelancers, they get asked the same questions within the company, and they will definitely value that also you take care of, let's say, them in some way or shape or form as well. And despite the fact that there are a lot of practical tips, I can tell you you're definitely at the right conference here. The tax and accounting session by Lars, I think that has just finished. Maybe some of you were there. I just sneaked in briefly, but this is the stuff that you need to take care of, definitely, and that you need to make yourself familiar with. Scheinselbstständigkeit, we had that. There are other people, especially lawyers, who can talk about that topic for ages, and definitely much more detailed than I'm capable of. And last but not least, and that's what I would like to influence you in a way as well, die Entwicklung der Regulierung von Freiberuflern in Deutschland is something that is very German-specific. But I think we need that from a European perspective as well, because the reason, from my point of view, why so less people has raised their hand in that cross-border working environment yet is because of that complexity. So you just hold back because it's easier maybe to do that in your home turf. But I'm pretty sure that for the future that won't work, or maybe it also shouldn't work. So let's see. Last but not least, ease. And ease is, from my point of view, the soft skill of the whole equation. And with soft skill, you can actually put everything in that is important for you. And I just brought a couple of examples that, from my point of view, should be in that category. So it's cultural dimensions. So the moment you leave Germany, of course, we all know that culture plays a vital role. So you need to have that in mind. It's structural ease, what I mean with that is maybe you don't want to stay with your current German company ecosystem and you want to change that. So you need to take care of what that structurally means for you. Economic stability and predictability, and the personal simplicity and lifestyle. Just a few knowledge nuggets here on cultural dimensions. Maybe some of you have already came across Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Hofstede, very famous guy who invented, so to say, a framework how you can compare countries or cultures. So I have to say cultures with each other. You can go to hofstede.com, and also there is a tool where you can compare the culture the culture of countries with each other based on that 6 dimensions. Very interesting from my point of view when you deal with Asian or when you want to work in the Asian space, because there are definitely differences that you need, from my point of view, to be aware of. Structural ease and economic stability and predictability. From my point of view, don't underestimate that point. World Bank is a good source of data. They are providing an ease of doing business index where countries are ranked in terms of how easy it is, for example, to register a new business and so on and so forth. Why do I think that's important? Because of course, just very basic stuff like currency stability. So maybe you get paid in another currency. That's going to influence, of course, your income stream heavily the moment that changes. And every social media freelancer who has lately removed his tax-paying environment from Germany to Dubai, so to say, has just experienced what predictability and stability, so to say, of a country or an environment where I maybe work or live means, and that I need to take that into account, and not only optimizing for the bigger income, so to say. And last but not least, of course, the lifestyle. I mean, lifestyle is absolutely personal. You need to determine by yourself how far is that from my home. Can I find a place? What is the cost of living? Can I decide my own way of working? Can I thrive actually in that weather? Do I like that it's sunny all the day, or all of that? So, as I said, that's for me the soft part of it. But it's still part of the equation, and I think it matters. So all of that is what you need to do, from my point of view, as homework if you think of doing cross-border freelancing, because I think all of that parts in the occasion matter to unlock your freelance potential. So unfortunately, what about Santa? I can't give him an easy advice where he shouldn't go. Maybe he does his math and follows my equation. So if some of you might not get Christmas presents this year, that's maybe because he decided that he's not coming to your country anymore. Don't blame me for that. But what I would like to finish with is actually that I would like to use this community to make that easier, because that's definitely not a thing that even me as a person, I can do that. I can't do that alone. Even the power of staffing companies is not enough to do that alone. We need to build, again, I think we had that in a speech before that, Banden. We need to build communities with which we can influence that, also from a political, from a tax environment perspective, from a company perspective, that this gets easier, and at the end, freelancers can really thrive in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And how was your nervousness?
It is so bad that I have to drink something.
Oh, right.
Okay, and just mean water.
Yeah, take your time. Well, we'll have stronger stuff, I guess, as well, but perhaps after lunch.
We don't have that, yeah.
After lunch is a good time for day drinking, I guess. We have a couple of minutes left before we go into the lunch break.
Okay.
First of all, thank you very much for your talk.
No worries.
Funnily enough, we should actually tell Sarah Weber this morning that her term of gangs, we would probably say Banden in English, is used in every other talk now. Yeah. She really sets the tone.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. Normally you don't want to start, but I think, she did a good job by starting the conference. Now she has her own claim.
Yes, exactly. There's a question on slide about the use of freelance, cross-border freelance potential at Hayes, because wouldn't it appear to be easier to actually look at the local freelance community, if you will, at each individual country, or is it better for you to actually look across borders?
Oh, that depends. I would say it was once way easier, and to be honest, it still is. I mean, that's also the reason why you don't raise your hand the moment you talk about cross-border environment. So from a staffing perspective, yes, it is easier. It is easier to use a freelancer in country who is present there. But I would say in the past, the reason for that was also came also from the customers, and the whole hybrid working environment, of course, changed the way that you can use nowadays talent. That includes, of course, non-perm talent. But I think for non-perm talent, that's just way more vital, because you are flexible by choice, and that also includes normally your locational flexibility. So I think companies would do way better when they would enter that turf, so to say, than still stick to their, no, I need a German speaker who comes in the office 4 days a week. I think that whole thing influenced that a lot. So that's why I see a huge change from my point of view happening in the next, 5 to 10 years in that environment.
Well, in your example there, the employer actually has someone coming in 4 days a week. That's actually progress, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not 5 days a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
so it's not that, not
and
that
you
old-fashioned.
get a fruit basket and all of that. So yeah.
And free drinks. Free drinks after lunch. And there was a second question from someone. Maybe you can elaborate on that. It's about the entry point into the UK. If you're German-based, what's the easiest entry point? I don't know whether you know what that person means by that. Are you still here? And can you, please...
No, not a haze. There are definitely platforms out there, I would say, that provide that kind of where you can search for jobs. What I would do is actually two things from my point of view. So staffing companies like Hays are normally have their databases, so you need to get registered there to be found, in a sense. The other way around is that you actively look for jobs, which also staffing companies like we publish, but others are maybe quicker in that, which is the typical freelancer marketplaces or stuff like that. So currently, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. It's a little bit, you have to do your, acquisition in a sense, sales.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions for Jessica right now? Please, go ahead.
You mentioned Dubai before. So what's your take on the freelance market in the Middle East? Do you have a current view?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I mean...
Small region of the world.
Yeah. Okay. That's where I personally would say you have to do this equation, or that you have to do your math very, very intensively. Because, of course, Dubai is attractive in terms of taxes. Dubai is attractive in terms of daily rates. Dubai has now just came up with these flexible terms of visas where you can easily work as a freelancer. At the same time, they have a war next door. So I don't know if you want to be there currently. So, again, it's a little bit like... no one-size-fits-all answer, but that would be my stuff that pops into my head straight away when I see Dubai. It's definitely an interesting market, a very vital, growing market for sure. The question is sometimes for me if you have to be in Dubai to work for a company like that. So again, that determines, do you want to go there because you maybe want to save taxes, or do you want to go there because they invest so much in certain things that is of interest for you in terms of your profession.
And you mentioned weather conditions.
And weather conditions.
So you may want to check them out before.
Good food, weather conditions. Yeah, for sure.
But most people thrive for some reason. Whenever people come back from Dubai, they're always like, it's the best.
Yeah,
walking around in 40 degrees all day.
Yeah.
Any other questions, please? Go ahead.
Yeah.
5 to 10% sounds great for
yeah.
The providers I know
ask for more. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's supply and demand. I mean, it's at the end it's supply and demand. So, yeah. Oh, there might be some in here. So I think I think it depends on what you're looking for. So Hays is not a provider that works for 5 to 10%. So yeah, others also don't. But the question is, what are you looking for? So there are providers on the market that just serve a specific element. So for example, payroll providers, or you just get employment of record providers, or you just, and so on and so forth. And that's the area where we as Hays. Exactly, it's a very specific segment. If you include the whole staffing life cycle, so to say, where we, and now I'm talking, of course, out of my Hays experience, but where the staffing company offers you a project, brings you through the interview process, blah, 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 then we charge more. So the 5 to 10% was more meaning from a compliance perspective, because there are definitely, this is, I would say, the stuff that you pay for the compliance part of the whole. Relocation agents, there are payment providers that are very good in cross-border payments. Employer of record is a term that is used in the permanent field a lot. That is now agency of record. So that helps you with, okay, I don't know, in the UK, how I can deal with IR35. Maybe you go through an employer of record. So the 5 to 10%, I would say, are for this compliance part of the whole staffing process, if that's fair. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Otherwise, I get fired if you get out of that. It's like, hey, it's just okay. No,
yeah.
No.
You pin her down. You pin her down on that. What you said. Lastly, before people obviously can approach you afterwards.
Of course, please.
Then I will just take the freedom to actually ask you, even though you made it clear. It's really up to everybody to look for their individual needs and all the rest of it. I get that, but I'd still press you for if you were to name a couple of countries in Europe where you feel like there is this sort of, as you did with I think Belgium it was, or the Netherlands, because there's this sort of vibe that freelancing is much more common perhaps, or there's this sort of acceptance that there's a lot of freelancers around. Which countries would you name where you feel like there is at least, apart from taxes and government regulations, this sort of vibe in the air?
Okay, so that's really my personal opinion. So I would say the Nordics, so Sweden, Netherlands, Belgium, they are very well known for their freelance culture. Non-perm is based in their roots, I would say, in a sense, and definitely companies that maybe come from that space or out of that countries had an influence, from my point of view, of the development in that countries. On the other hand, the whole Iberia and Italy area is currently definitely thriving. So they are growing despite, for example, Germany is doing. So there are a lot of jobs that you can find. At the same time, the daily rates are for sure lower than you would expect them in Germany. And then last but not least, from a also language perspective, of course, if you're only, so to say, capable of speaking English, you will never have a problem in Poland, Czech Republic, or Romania, from my point of view. So these are the countries, from my point of view, where it's way more common to articulate yourself in a foreign language. While I would say, if you move to France, which is the same thing.
It's always France.
And Germany, but it's also Germany. I always say it's France, but also Germany.
Yeah. Yes.
You still get the question, does that candidate speak German? And I would still answer for what. But that's still the thing.
Yeah. Well, the people that sold me strawberries the other day, they only spoke English, I'm sure. And it was like, it's a village outside of Potsdam. It's not that big.
Okay. And
I was very happy about that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was very nice. Yeah. Just for anyone who cares. Yeah. Jessica, thank you so much for leading us with this food for thought into food for the soul and for the body. Thank you very much for your talk, and I hope you have a nice lunch break. Anybody who's still interested in keeping this conversation further, please approach Jessica in the break. And I see you at 1:30 with Christine on this very stage.
Have fun.
See you in a bit.
Thank you.